Welcome, Jennie-maree. Lovely to have you here. Thank you for coming into Timeless Textiles to exhibit. This is your first solo here. So
it is indeed.
Lovely to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Yes.
Now, Untangled, that's such a big title for this show. Do you want to just tell us a bit about why you chose Untangled as the title?
I think basically because of the fact that it was more about thread and fibre. So it was just sort of untangling what I have been sort of going through over the last 10 years and sort of where my art is going, and going from very much from the walls to more 3D work. But of course, a lot of my work has always been very predominantly free motion embroidery. So even my botanicals, a lot of those are in that sort of thread sort of realm. So I just sort of wanted a name that would actually cover all of that. So Untangled is more about the thread and celebrating the thread.
So the piece behind you is the most extraordinarily complex piece of art. Would you like to just tell us a little bit about how on earth you've produced such a beautiful piece of artwork?
So the gravures is something that I've actually sort of developed just recently over the last maybe 12 months. I decided that I needed to do something that had, with the gravures, I needed to have a bit more body and a bit more volume, and the way that all the little, it sort of stands up. So this is more wrapped wire as opposed to machine embroidery. In fact, it's more the leaves that I've actually embroidered and stitched, but a lot of the actual flowers, they're all wrapped and wired and wrapped together. I actually make them in sections, so quite a few sections, and then the separate sections, and then I put them all together. So this was actually a technique that I developed, and over the last 12 months I've actually sort of gone from one idea to the next until I've improved my technique. And I think that's probably something that I do a lot of. I actually like process, I suppose, and I really enjoy thinking about how I can make something and how I can improve that and improve the process and make it look real, but also celebrating the fibre, the fabric, the thread, so that it still looks like it's like a textile art piece, but also sort of tricks your eye that it looks like it's a real grevillea, real banksia, whatever botanical that I'm actually working on at the time.
And some of the artwork that you've got, I know, are little spheres that you've created, and I think these are machine embroidered?
Yes. So my banksias, I very much stitch onto what's known as water-soluble fibre. So I basically stitch them into like discs, and then I did sort of for a long time sort of think about how I could stitch something flat but turn it into a 3D piece. So then I had to think about the shape of whatever botanical that I was actually trying to produce, and naturally the banksia and even the callistemon, like the bottle brush and a few of the other plants, had that sort of cylinder form. So I sort of worked out that being able to stack up a whole heap of stitched discs, that can give me that sort of look that I was actually after. Some of my banksia pieces in particular, they can have anywhere from about 35 right up to some of my bigger pieces that I've done, that they can go to like 50 odd discs. So they can be very time consuming to actually stitch. So.
Are they more time consuming than the wrapped wire?
It's still all handwork, so naturally everything, they're still quite time consuming. I wrap faster now, and I suppose I stitch faster. So it's the same with anybody, when you do something over and over again, you do develop quite a skill and you can go a lot faster. But I would say, I feel like the banksias probably do take me slightly longer, but it just depends on the size. Naturally, like something that's smaller is going to be a lot quicker. Something that's a lot fuller is going to have a lot more work. And it depends on how I've actually produced the leaves as well. So these are stitched fabric leaves, And sometimes, like these ones here, I've actually done the same process as this, where they're the machine embroidery onto the water soluble. So that's a lot more intensity, so it takes a lot longer to stitch those. So this is a series that I did. I've actually done 6 pieces in this series. And what I've done is these backgrounds here are actually silk velvet, and I've actually marbled. So I've put some silk dye onto some thickened water and been able to take up that effect onto the silk marble. My faces are all machine embroidered, which I actually stitch them separately, and then I stitch them onto the background. And I do that for a reason, because then I can come in and I can sort of go around and detail in between, around the nostril, around the mouth. And then even though they're a 2D piece, it just means I can give them a bit more shape, a bit more contour, and just give them a bit more of a realistic sort of look. So I've got 6 in the series, and they're portraits, but they're an animated sort of portrait.
And what does the future look like for you? Have you thought about a new direction that you'd like to explore?
So the last piece I just finished before coming up here was actually a bird that's feeding off a grevillea. And I feel like I would really like to take my botanicals just that little bit further and sort of have them, have sort of birds feeding off them, interested in sort of going in that direction. And I'm always interested in producing different varieties of botanicals, a bit interested in some of the native orchids and that sort of thing. So I think I will very much sort of look at different flowers and see what will be my next challenge.
And is the bird 3D?
Yes. So I've actually got it quite literally, the wires going right through the actual grevillea, so it's going through its beak, so it's actually flying, it's in flight and feeding off the grevillea. So I'm quite pleased with that. So I think there's definitely a lot of more avenue to be able to look in that sort of direction and have sort of more, insects and bird life and that sort of thing, sort of feeding off the actual botanicals and making a bit more of a story about the flowers. So.
And do you bushwalk a lot?
We actually live at the beach, so I walk. I would love to say I walk every day with the dogs on the beach, but that doesn't always happen because sometimes life gets in the way. But I very much do go for a walk down on the beach as much as I can with the dogs. It's a sort of quite an organic beach where we have lots of wildflowers and that sort of thing, coastal banksias. The gardens around us very much have a lot of native plants and that sort of stuff. So, and my own garden as well, we're very much planted. We live on 15 acres, so we live on a property, and we've planted all natives, lots of banksias and grevilleas and other different, waratahs. I've sort of experimented in sort of all those areas and very keen to sort of keep on, producing. Definitely the Australians. I mean, I'm an Aussie, so the natives are actually sort of like, close to my heart.
You've certainly captured them beautifully. You've got a very good eye for being able to put the delicacy of Australian wildflowers into art form. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. I really feel that I get so much enjoyment from making them, and I love what I do, and I think it just shows in my work. And I'm sure lots of artists have that feeling as well. So, I love it. Thank you.
Well, congratulations. I think this is a beautiful show. It's lovely to have you here at Textiles.
Yeah, it's lovely. Thank you. And it's lovely to be in Newcastle too. So, thank you for inviting me. And it's wonderful. Thank you.
Great pleasure.